Alright guys, so today is the day we're finally gonna set up our drone in terms of the camera settings and all those settings. So in this video I'll be going over all my camera settings for the DJI Mini 3 Pro in 2025. So let's get right into it. As you can see right here, I have my DJI Mini 3 Pro drone right here. I have my controller. This is just the mic that I use, and I also have my ND filters in here, and I'll show you guys how I use those later on in this video. Oh, I need to take off this cap right here. Alright, now the cap is off, and let's bring the controller close by. I need to put my phone on do not disturb so I don't get any notification. Alright, so the first camera settings that I'm gonna change is the resolutions and the frame per second. So for the resolution, I go with 4K, and for the frame per second, I would go with 30 frames per second, and that would give you the highest quality. Like if you try to go to like 48 or 50 or 60, it will give you those 60 frames per second, but it wouldn't give you at the highest quality. So I think 30 frames per second at 4K is a good quality for the drone. All right, next up is the exposure, which is EV. And when it comes on to EV, I usually go from anywhere between minus 0.3 to -1. So anywhere in between those is usually the exposure that I go for. And if I'm shooting at night or so, I would always just go anywhere between plus 0.3 to plus 1.0. So anywhere between that scale. So overall, you want to be between +1 or -1, and that will all depend on your lighting condition. Like if you're shooting at night, then you maybe want to be on the positive side, and if you're shooting at day, then maybe you want to be on the negative side. Alright, so next up is my white balance, and I'll go here and then go to camera and then scroll down to white balance. Usually I just leave that at auto because I believe that DJI does a good job of keeping your white balance to look perfectly fine while you're shooting. So I'll just keep this at auto and not manual. And for the color profile, I'll just leave this at normal. Personally, I go with normal because I think normal is just easier to use and it gives you a good quality right out of the box. You don't need to do decent like and tweak stuff in the post-production. So I would say use normal and you get some awesome footage from normal. When it comes on to the coding format, I will leave it at H264 because that's easier to manage. And also when it comes on to format, I would do MP4 over MOV because MP4 is more easier to manage also. Alright, so when it comes on to style and it comes on to sharpness or noise reduction, I would just leave those at 0. You might need to tweak it in the nighttime. Whenever you're shooting at night, you might want to tweak the noise reduction to make sure you don't have that much grain in your footage, but overall you should just be able to just keep it at 0 and you should be fine. Now one settings I always turn on is the 9 grid. So these grid line right here, they come in handy whenever you're flying so you can know if your subject is in the center or off to the right or off to the left. It's just useful whenever you're flying so you can have your subject directly in the center. There also are some other grid lines like the cross or the dot. You can turn them all on, but I believe just having the 9 lines or the 9 squares or the 9 rectangles are good enough. You don't need that diagonal line or that dot or anything like that. I think once you have your subject in the middle right here, you should be perfectly fine. It should be centered and all that. Now the next thing I want to turn on is histogram, which helps you to see if your image is overexposed or underexposed. And you also have the overexposure warning. Now for the histogram, you want the histogram to be like how it is right now. You don't want it to be too much to the left or too much to the right. I believe when it's in the right side, it is like underexposed, and when it's over to the left side, it is like overexposed. So overall, you want it to be in the center like that. And then overexposure warning, that comes in handy. So if you're flying and you're just overexposed, it will give you a warning, and you might have to turn down your exposure or something or put on an ND filter. And then the next thing you want to turn on is the peaking level. I just put that to normal, so it shows you where the peaking level are, and it will give you like some red lines on your screen whenever it is like peaking. But overall, I don't really use this that much, but if you do use it, put it to normal, but otherwise I'll just keep it off because more than likely everything will be in focus. This is only for when you're using like manual focus stuff, but I don't think you really need to use manual focus that much on the DJI Mini 3 Pro. It's telling me that my battery is going to turn off, so I might need to restart this video soon. So the next step is I leave this in auto because, as I said, auto is perfectly fine when you're shooting. You don't need to go pro mode. I think auto is perfectly fine. And as you guys can see, you want to have enough storage. As you can see, I have way than enough storage. I have like 8 hours and something. If oh, I just lost power to my drone. Let me turn it on back real quick. All right, should be turned on in a second. Give it some time. Come on. All right, here we go. Yeah, so as you can see, I have enough storage. I have like 8 hours and 41 minutes. So that's more than enough time for me to fly my drone without worrying about storage. So that's pretty much it for the camera settings. Next settings that I will be going over with you guys is the sensitivity settings. But quite honestly, I just leave that as the default settings, like the sensitivity of the gimbal and the sensitivity of you flying and all that. I just usually keep that at the default level, but you can always tweak it to however you want. But for me, usually between the default settings and just some little tweaking here and there, I'll tweak it to my liking. But it's all personal preference on how sensitive you want the gimbal to be and your controls to be. Now, personally, what I use and I recommend you guys use is ND filters, especially if you're shooting in day. So here I have some ND filters officially from DJI. I believe there's some third-party ones somewhere on Amazon or so. You can go and check them out. But usually I will go with the 16. The 16 is not too bright or not too dark. So I think the 16 worked fine. I believe I have 16, 64, and I believe 256. So 256 is the darkest and 64 is like the second darkest. I'm not sure if they made them any darker than that, but here I'm just wipe this with my t-shirt. Probably not the best choice, but using what I have, and they're so easy to put on and it doesn't add any extra weight to your drone or anything like that. So it would be still under the 250 grams. So I'll have that on and I'll just shoot, especially when it's in the daytime. So those are my settings, guys. In the next video, I'll be actually flying this drone for the first time after getting it back from DJI. So stay tuned for that and check out that video whenever it's out. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss that video. And I'll see you guys in my next video. Peace.